Hello and welcome to Lesson 10-2. Today we're going to look at quadratics in standard form, part 2. Now the last couple days we've been spending some time looking at graphing quadratic equations and functions. Today we're going to look at graphing inequalities. Now graphing quadratic inequalities is actually similar to graphing linear inequalities. And like graphing linear inequalities, we're going to have to worry about solid or dashed lines and which side to shade on. So just to kind of review, we're going to create a curve, okay, just like we would for any other quadratic graph. It's going to be dashed if it's a less than or a greater than symbol, or the curve will be solid if it's the less than or equal to or the greater than or equal to. Then we're going to pick a test point, just like what we did when we were graphing linear inequalities. And we're going to shade the side that is the solution, or shade the side that is true. So we'll look at a couple examples and then you guys can be on your way. So here I'm going to graph the function y is less than or equal to x squared minus 3x minus 4. So because I have y by itself over here and everything else is here, I can see that I have a quadratic function. And I'm going to treat this just like a quadratic graph without the inequality. So I'm going to go ahead and find my vertex. So remember, I'm going to do the opposite of b over 2 times a. So in this case, I can see that my x value of my vertex is going to be 1/2. And I can find the y coordinate by taking that 1.5, squaring it, and subtracting 3 times 1.5. And subtracting 4 from that. And when I do that, I end up with a negative 6.25. So now when I go to set up my table, I'm going to put my vertex in the middle, which is 1.5, and a negative 6.25. I'm going to pick some points that work out nice. And in this case, I'm going to pick a 0. And I'm also going to pick something like, we'll say 4. So when I plug in a 0, I end up with a negative 4. And when I plug in the number 4, I end up with 0. So now when I go and I plot this on my graph, I'm going to get something that looks like this. So I've got my 3 points plotted on here. Now what I have to do is I have to connect them. Well, because my inequality is a less than or equals to, I can go ahead and use a solid line to connect these points. So when I do that, I end up with something that kind of looks like this. So that's my solid or dash part. Now what I have to do is I have to pick a test point. And again, just like with linear inequalities, I like to pick the test point 0, 0. So in this case, 0, 0 falls inside of my parabola. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this into my original equation. So I have 0 is less than or equal to 0 squared is still 0, minus 3 times 0 is 0, minus 4. So I really end up with 0 is less than or equal to negative 4. Well, because that's not true, and my point is on the inside of this parabola, that tells me that I need to shade everything on the outside of my parabola, as this is where all my solutions are going to be. Now for example 6, it's telling us to graph the function of y is less than a negative x squared plus 6x minus 5. So again, I'm going to start out by finding my vertex, which in this case is the opposite of b, divided by 2 times a, and a in this case is a negative 1. So I end up with a negative 6 over a negative 2, or a positive 3. So this is my x coordinate. To find that y coordinate, I'm going to plug in, I have a negative 3 squared plus 6 times 3 minus 5. So 3 squared is 9, times a negative 1 is a negative 9, plus 18 gives me a positive 9, minus 5 gives me a positive 4. So I know that my vertex then occurs at the coordinate point 3, 4. I'm going to pick a point that comes before and a point that comes after and solve. So when I plug a 0 in, I end up with negative 5. When I plug a 4 in, I end up with a positive 3. So if I go ahead and plot my points, I have 0, negative 5, which is going to be right here. I have 3, 4, and I have 4, 3. And again, I'm going to look at my inequality, which is a less than symbol. Less thans need to be dashed. So we're just going to do a dashed line through my coordinate points here. And I'm going to pick a test point. We can go ahead and pick the test point 0, 0 because my graph does not go through that point. And I'm going to be left with 0 is less than 0 plus 0 minus 5. Or it says, is 0 really less than a negative 5? The answer to that is no. And because my test point is on the outside, that means my solution point is going to be on the inside. So I'm going to shade everything on the inside of this parabola. Please let me know if you guys have any questions. Otherwise, I will see you in class, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks.